Bonjour, hi, candidates. Hugh Hewitt. Why am I playing Hamilton on this, the last day of April in the year of the plague, 2020? Because if you go to WashingtonPost.com at the very top of the page on the right-hand side, you'll see my new column on what's coming next in the Senate. I can spend all the time you'd like, and you ought to go to covidtracking.com and get smart about the numbers. I finally found the best website, covidtracking.com. I can tell you, for example, there are 18,027 cases in Ohio and 975 people have died. Right? You tell me, Oregon, are you up listening early in Oregon? There have been 2,510 positive tests and 103 people have died. Of course, the numbers in North New York are grim. I don't have to review that. But did you know in South Carolina there have been 6,000 cases and 244 people have died? When you go to Tennessee, there have been 10,366 positive cases. These are all the known cases. Of course, it has asymptomatic minor cases all over. They've also got 158,000 negative cases. 195 people have died. In Texas, 732 people have died. In Utah, 46 people have died. The country, in Virginia, though, 552 people have died inside the Beltway. It's not just a New York problem, but are you overthinking how big it is? 60,000 plus Americans have died, close to 1/3 of those in the city and region around New York. But Georgia has reopened, and we'll be watching Georgia very, very closely in the week ahead as Governor Kemp leads the most aggressive reopening. But I am telling you, I think people are going to begin to rethink what they want to advise. I think I'm more cautious than most everybody else in the Salem Radio Network. I am. I'm the one end of the spectrum because I'm influenced deeply by the statistics out of 1918 and the fear that it might mutate. But you look at Georgia, which has had 26,000 positive cases. They've had 1,120 people die. And you say, okay, that's a good middle ground. Not New York City, not Tennessee. Got Atlanta with an airport. And what we're seeing is the effects of the Chinese Communist Party not telling the world. And it got into the country and it got started in the country. And then we caught up with our testing after we overcame the CDC breakdown. And I think Donald Trump's doing a great job. I do. I think he's doing a great job. And I don't know that anyone could do a better job in rallying the country. But now it's up to the governors to reopen. And it's up to the Congress of the United States to decide what happens in that room next. This is what I wrote for the Post this morning. I want you to send it everywhere. Congress will definitely pass a Phase 4 relief package simply because it must. The measure is likely to be the most significant legislation by any Congress since the statutes authorizing the draft in 1940 and the Lend-Lease Act the following year. What is less certain is when it will pass exactly and what will be in it. Too many industries in the defense industrial base that are critical to the national security are in need of massive assistance. The private sector cannot stand back up without liability protection. The collision with China puts a new focus on big tech. And if state and local governments are going to receive more aid than the billions already sent their way, it is clear there should be strings requiring reforms attached. For conservatives, there should be 4 main priorities in the next deal. First, money and incentives must be provided to the 3 sectors that need to respond not just to the coronavirus crisis, but also to that government whose negligence visited on the world, the Chinese Communist Party of the People's Republic of China. Vast outlays and authority are needed to, 1, recapitalize the defense industrial base, provide funds for critical weapons platforms aimed at deterring any prospect of conflict with the CCP. And by the way, congratulations to Wisconsin, where they're going to build the new FREM frigate in Mike Gallagher's district. It was awarded yesterday. Let's start churning them out. They got a contract for 10. We're going to need 50 or 60 of those things. Bravo, Wisconsin. Bravo, Secretary Esper. Bravo, the United States Navy. Bravo, President Trump. That's really the first big step to getting to 355, churning out the frigates. 2, we've got to revive the manufacturing here in the States of key pharmaceutical and personal protective equipment. 3, we got to resurrect the nuclear power industry, uranium mining, processing, enrichment, and a new generation of nuclear plant design and construction. The second big area, private industry needs new federal laws to preempt all state tort law concerning liability for coronavirus-related claims of negligence and intentional injury. Indeed, the national economy, so badly wounded, cannot any longer afford the patchwork quilt of 50 state standards on product and workplace liability. Defective products in dangerous workplaces cannot be tolerated, and injuries that could be foreseen and prevented must be compensated if they occur via fair trials. But the roulette of 50 different tort systems is an immense burden on interstate commerce. It has to end. The deaths and injuries occasioned by the virus do not justify legal action against U.S. pharmaceutical and medical device makers rushing to find therapeutics and vaccines. Third, the nature of the challenge to American freedoms presented by the Chinese Communist Party is clear. So should be the obligations of American big tech companies to side forthrightly and finally with the American Republic that created the free markets and free minds that birthed these companies. Every boardroom and technology at the intersection of the United States' relationship with the CCP must be an open book to U.S. intelligence, defense, and law enforcement communities. There aren't any neutrals anymore. Both sides of the fence cannot be played. Finally, almost all state and local government finances are shattered by the disappearance of tax revenue. Some states are just crippled. The Senate is lucky to have senators who have been governors, such as Florida's Rick Scott, Utah's Mitt Romney, New Hampshire's Jeanine Shaheen, and North Dakota's John Hoeven. They should be consulted on what strings might reasonably be attached to additional aid to encourage long overdue restructuring requirements in the state governments and possibly bankruptcy reorganization solutions for cities and counties. That's the short list of what conservatives want. Democrats will have their own wish list. That's why phase 4, in quotes, is shaping up to be a law of a legislative lifetime. It's going to happen in a room somewhere. The best legislators right now will be listening, thinking, open to some sort of big deal that the founders who worked in the room where it happened so long ago achieved. That deal got Alexander Hamilton his national bank, while powerful Virginians got the District of Columbia. We need another such legislative miracle from political leaders determined to win big arguments, but aware of the other sides and the country's need for the same. There is no time to spare. We've moved from a medical crisis, of which we are now in possession of vast amounts of data, a decent outline of how to care for the patients, hospital capacity, ICU capacity, good tracking. We have caught up after the bad trip and stumble we took because of the Communist Chinese Party on the medical side. But on the public policy side, we don't know what to do yet, and we should do that. I read very carefully because I own Amazon stock, and it went up $100 yesterday in anticipation of earnings. It's going to fall $140 or so at the open, and then it's going to rebound. Jeff Bezos is a freaking genius. I know some people don't like him. I think he's a genius because I was worried. I said, this is, as an investor, I'm thinking, okay, they're going to make so much money. What are they going to do? And Bezos did not disappoint. All right, he did not disappoint. He issued a statement with the letter, with the report. They made so much money. They made $75 billion. But he said, if you are a share owner in Amazon, you may want to take a seat because we're not thinking small. Under normal circumstances in this coming quarter, we'd expect to make some $4 billion or more in operating profit. But these aren't normal circumstances. Instead, we expect to spend the entirety of that $4 billion and perhaps a bit more on COVID-related expenses, getting products to customers and keeping employees safe. Bravo, Mr. Bezos. Everyone in America has to be about rebuilding the American economy. Every company that is growing has to put that growth back into hiring workers and expanding like Bezos is doing. It's also good business, by the way, but it's great patriotism. And I think if the Senate gets to work, the House, forget the House. Nancy Pelosi's asking for crazy stuff. But the room where it happens is where Senate Majority Leader McConnell sends his advance team, his whip, Roy Blunt, and a couple of the really smart ones. Get to work, get it done. Send my Washington Post column everywhere because we need what they did when Jefferson, Hamilton, and Madison got together. A big deal. Stay tuned.